Welcome to Mastering Life's Adventures, an educational podcast about tapping into your true self, the soul, the substance of your life, to discover what life's ups and downs are really about, and how to have a greater sense of purpose, peace, joy, and fulfillment. I am Dr. Judith Holder, your host, coach, psychologist, fellow seeker who enjoys diving into the connections between spirituality, psychology, wellness, and your everyday life's adventures. All preparing and polishing you like the facets of a magnificent diamond to be your best self. If you're craving more from your life, you are in the right place. Come, let's journey together and transforming what you know into who you really are. Mastering Life's Adventures begins now. Hi, I'm back. I'm back to talk about an area that sometimes we all need to look at in a more kind of fine-tuned way. And our topic for today is emotional traits that can fuel relationship deception. And I have with me a special guest. Michelle will introduce herself, and then we'll dive right into the topic.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Holder, for having me on your show. And I have a dual role, actually. I am a book and publishing consultant. That's what I do full time. But then I am a relationship deception recovery mentor. And that means that I love to mentor women who have been through relationship deception, whether that is romance scams, narcissistic abuse, or anything in between. And I like to bring them and give them hope that they can have healing and wholeness on the other side of that.
Oh, great. Great. So tell us a little bit about your journey and your experiences and where were you when you were in your formative years versus as you see the tracks moving and you're moving along in your life. Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I say sometimes that it's a miracle that I am still smiling and still standing and still hoping and moving forward, because I come from, my family described us as, my parents described us as a good old wholesome all-American family. Mm-hmm. And to me, we were anything but that. There was so much dysfunction in it. My dad was a very successful business person, drank quite regularly, but was very successful, never let it. He came from his own father. So he, I think, was determined, I'm going to change my family history. So he was very into family and all that, very much. My mother thought she was June Cleaver, but she was addicted to prescription medicine as far back as I can remember. She was like this with a local pharmacist, like close, and just drinking and stuff like that, but still sort of maintained. And so my formative years were full of a hero scapegoat dynamic where I was the scapegoat. Everything I did, everything I said pretty much was criticized. The golden child, younger sister, by 2 years, she was the hero. She was the golden child. And any family who's been in that dynamic knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'm sure you do too, just as from your profession. But that's how it was. And my mother was still criticizing me and ridiculing me and criticizing every move until she died. That's what I grew up with, and had 23 years of marriage of a lot of the same, but 23 years after marriage, I am still standing and I am still smiling. So I'm really thankful that I had the inner umph to survive that, and it did make me stronger.
Yeah, one of the things you were saying there about your formative years and the criticism of your mother that took place is that the soul goes into dormancy sometimes, and it goes into hibernation because it wants to protect itself, and it wants to be able to, feel some degree of comfort. And usually sometimes we get that from other people, maybe not in our family, but from a teacher or from a mentor or for a minister or for someone else. And so that helps to comfort us a little bit more. Or we have this inner strength that you were talking about, that we know maybe it's something we're going through, but we're learning certain lessons along the way of going through that, even though it may be painful. What are your thoughts about that?
Yes, absolutely. My solution in the fight or flight syndrome, and I know there's other fight, flight, flee, and fawn, but mine was to flee. And I fled to my bedroom, and that's where I spend my life. I'm a book and publishing consultant. I learned to have a love of reading. I read all the classics. I was writing either in a diary or writing stories. So in that seclusion, which was safe for me, that's where I found my solace in this dynamic.
Right. In the midst of the chaos or the confusion or dysfunction that happens, it is as if there's this innate desire of wanting to get somewhere that could be of support to us. But also, what I'm hearing, you actually went internal. And that internal, it allows you to hit on something that is a passion for you, that becomes a passion later on. But it felt like it was kind of an escape. But in actuality, it also was helping you to develop these skills and this awareness and the breadth and depth of knowledge that you need as a publisher to be able to connect with others. But what happens also is we have to be able to recognize not only the dysfunction, but also the soul needs to recognize the pain that takes place so that the soul can be able to say, let me find a way to heal. And that takes sometimes years, decades, it take a long time, but that's the quest of the soul. That's the direction the soul is trying to look at. What do I need to help me through these difficult times, as well as the good times?
You're so on point with that, because I say, yes, I'm strong now and I'm blah, blah. I did not say all that big piece in the middle of the pain of the having to not even detach with love, but just detach emotionally and go through the loss. Like a lot of people have lost their mothers to death, but mine was losing, like having to go through a death of a relationship with a mother or mom that I always wanted, that I never got. So you have to go through still the pain of letting go of that and realizing that's not the story I had in my brain. And through other circumstances with my own daughter, I've had to grieve that also. And that's more detaching in love, because that's my baby girl. And I've had to more detach and love. Painful? Oh my gosh. Yes, because I had to again grieve the loss of a relationship that I wanted so desperately. And that's still not lost, because as long as somebody is still alive, my daughter's 42. I love her dearly, and she is so brilliant and talented. But going back to my own mother, there was so much pain there. And I remember one particular Christmas after I was divorced, and holidays were filled. She was Italian, so we were filled with wonderful food and lasagna and the whole thing. We were filled with wonderful food, family table, the whole thing. But one person usually at that table was the brunt of the jokes. I was that often. And I remember after I was divorced and I went for a Christmas, I think it was a Christmas, and I remember leaving, and my mother always used to call me, my middle name was I can't stay long, because I put that boundary as soon as I came in the door. I'm sorry, I can't stay long. I have other things. But when I left early that day, I remember getting in my car, going around the corner and screaming and pounding on my steering wheel in such a rage and hurt and disappointment. So I've already been through that. That is a crucial part. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to go through that hard part. You have to get to this. This is genuine. I'm a happy, jovial person, but you have to wade through the mud. You have to sit and learn to breathe in the mud. before you get to that.
And that is a great point that you're making, because what the soul is trying to do is we have to go through the discomfort in order to move towards the healing. But also what you're saying inadvertently that people don't realize is that for the soul, it is really awareness that sometimes we have a great sense of a light around us. And the light sometimes attracts the moths. And it can be family moths, friends, it can be foe, it can be whatever, that because of this energy, because I say the soul is a substance of your life. And being the substance of who you are, it is light. And therefore, our light sometimes is greater and attracts sometimes criticism, condemnation, judgment, anger, frustration, or whatever. And for the person who is a young child and a teenager, they don't know what to do with this. It's like, why? You're attacking me. Why are you this way towards me? Why can't you just love me? Because ultimately, that was what the soul wants. And that's what we want as we're growing up as well. And so when that's not happening in our family, it can be very deflating.
Yeah, it absolutely was deflating. And even as an adult, being compared, looking at my mother holding my one of my grandsons and saying, "Oh, look, you have big ears just like your grandma." And just, I was in my 50s, at that point. But at that point, I had done some healing. It still hurts no matter how old you are. But yeah, that to have to wade through that, and you have to realize often it has nothing to do with you. It's the other person's, as they say, hurt people. And you have to really realize. And I had some therapy or some counseling, I guess you would say, in the midst of that. And it was a day when the counselor said, "Michelle, it's never been about you. It's about her, and you've monsterized her, your mom." And so that was key to me to realize, oh, wait a minute, but how come, if it's about her, how come I feel so rejected? But that comes from their hurt. And sometimes you're just, and my mom was like that, even with my grandkids. You had a favorite, you had a villain and a hero. And many families have that dynamic, but you have to wade through the hurt to get to the other side. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, unfortunately.
Yeah. I actually say that a lot, to individuals, when I am coaching them, and that you have to be uncomfortable with being uncomfortable to move towards a different stage in yourself, in the relationships, or in your interactions. As we're talking about this whole notion of the emotional traits that can fuel relationship deception, we're really talking about some formative things that can happen to us, knowingly or unknowingly, that are fueling some of the relationships that we have in the future. And what the soul is aware of the fact is that it still is seeking for love. It still wants to be loved. But what we don't necessarily always think about first is we got to love ourselves. We got to accept ourselves. We got to be comfortable with ourselves.
I never got that part until I was, I would say, probably in my 60s, and I'm still in my 60s. But I always equated self-love with arrogance, like you're conceited. And I was told as I was growing up, if I said anything positive about myself, "Oh, Michelle, you're getting conceited." So that point you just made is so important about self-love, because I always equated it, I can't love myself because then I'm conceited, so that point is driven in from childhood. And you think, oh no, to self-love. But I am understanding that more and more and more. For my soul to be healthy, I've got to put the oxygen mask on myself. I've got to nurture myself, mind, body, and spirit, or else I'm not going to be any use to anybody else.
Right, because ultimately what you're learning to be in the process of that self-awareness of love, the more that we can be more love and understand the comfortability of being that love, it ends up allowing us to radiate the love and then attract to us that which is more loving, or be discerning of that which is not as well. So it's amazing, things. And this is what the life path that we're on. each person has a unique life path that they're on. And sometimes they're not aware of it, that they're trying to learn certain things. They're trying to do it any way they can. It's like the light being off in the room. When you're trying to grapple with, okay, where is the couch and where is the chairs and where is everything? And then all of a sudden you realize there's a light switch. I'm going to turn that light switch on and see, things. And that light switch is actually being us asking the questions about, what is this experience trying to teach me? What is this experience trying to help me to see? What are the themes that are going on for me? And how do I take those themes and be able to say, Lord, help me to see all this theme here and what you want me to do as the next best step along my way. And that is important light switch to have when we can get there and find it. And if we don't have the light switch, then we can have a flashlight. Start with the flashlight to help you to begin in that process. Your thoughts?
That's so true. And I think that light switch comes in many forms. It comes through, and I'm a believer in counseling and therapy. I think everybody should have it, should go through it, even if you think you are the most emotionally healthy person in the whole world and you grew up in a wonderful family structure. Everybody needs help processing decisions and thoughts and stuff like that. It can come in the form of balanced friends. It can come in the form of Bible teaching at church, teaching that fills your soul. It can come in the form of your inner circle best friends. It can come in the form of just being contemplative. And I'm still, all these years later, it's just part of, I think, my DNA is that I'm very introspective. I'm going to think about things. I'm not going to just make decisions willy-nilly. I really am going to process, sometimes over-process. But so all of that builds into the light switch. To me, it's just not one method. It can come from a variety.
And you're talking about the uniqueness of each person. Like there are I like to say there's two snowflakes alike, so there's no two journeys are going to be exactly alike. And so how they get to that light switch or decide is they want it to be a flame or they decide they want it to be a flashlight, whatever they want to do, but it brings illumination. That's the key. It brings illumination and greater seeing, to things that are going on around them. And when you're talking about this whole focus around the traits that lead into this relation deception. Tell me more about that.
Yes, all of the good traits that many, and I'll just speak to women for this answer, the traits that we have, the nurturing, the caring, the attentiveness, the giving that we have in our spirits, those traits make us, unfortunately, targets for relationship deception because narcissistic abusers are attracted to those traits because they've never had them and they want them and they know that maybe they'll never get them. And so they're attracted. All those are positive traits. I wouldn't trade any of those traits for anything, but they are an attractor for relationship deception. And not only narcissistic abusers, but romance scammers that are lurking online, even in person, because I've had that happen as well in person. So people think, oh no, I'm not doing the online thing. It's okay. You can meet predators in person too.
You're saying something that's important, and that is there's the traits that make us human, that make us great at who we are, being the nurturing, as you're saying, or the giving or the caring types of traits. But also, I wonder what you think about when those traits are overly done. When they're overly done, do they lead then to the attraction to someone who's also overly does the narcissism or overdoes the me type of focus that they want on themselves?
No, that is so true. And the traits, any time you have those traits, if somebody is seeking to do people harm, then they're going to exploit those traits. So yeah, don't say, well, I'm going to be a mean, nasty person. That's not the answer. Keep your authentic self, keep yourself intact. But it's important just to be aware that predators are looking for those traits to exploit. And you can't be, I'm also not a believer in just look, the monster is lurking around every corner. You can't live in fear either, but you just have to be aware and know some of the signs and know that predators are out there, and you think, oh no, but they are.
One of the things I want you to think about in a minute, I'm going to make a comment, and I want you to think about is, what are those signs? What are other ways in which maybe women, as we're talking about, unknowingly put themselves in a way that makes them more vulnerable, to what you're talking about. But also I want to make a comment about the soul in this situation. The soul is very innocent, and the soul is very much sensitive. The soul is very much intuitive. And so these are all the qualities that make the soul so precious, and it wants guidance and direction from us and our higher self, which I call the I am presence. You can call it Atman, you can call it creator or whatever. And so what happens is that sometimes we're in those situations where we're not aware of the fact that we can call upon our soul and our soul substance, which is our Christ self and I am presence. And as I said, creator, and just say, help me to see this. What's going on here? Why is this happening? And it's hard sometimes to know because we never think about it, because we're just trying to get through it most of the time. But it's something that I think when we fall upon the Lord, as they say, and we ask God to say, this pain right now, there's something to be learned from this. Help me to learn it. And let me to see how other people perceive me so that I am no longer in the crossfire, of this particular type of person or personality. Because there's certain personalities that you're talking about, Michelle, that are more likely to want to take advantage.
Oh, without a doubt, yes. And we could be minding our own business, going about our life, and somebody is watching us from, and not creepiness watching us, but watching us, observing us from a distance and observing, you know what? Yeah, I see the way they move around. And I had this recently happen at the gym last year, the beginning of last year. And somebody had been watching me or observing me at the gym. And I'm not looking for anybody. I'm there to get my workout in. I'm not, in fact, I put on as mean of a gym face. Now, I don't have a mean face, but, I try to be serious because I'm not there to have long conversations or any conversations. I'm there to do my weight training or my cardio and do that. But this person approached me and they were an emotional manipulative predator. And I didn't recognize it, but they had been observing me from a distance and sized me up without me even knowing it.
It's as if there are always people that are observing and looking at us. But what you're saying is this particular was sizing you up in order to see if they could be able to take advantage of you in terms of your good nature or your nurturing nature or your caring nature. And that ended up being something that you didn't see coming. That's what I hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, very, when you have a predator, a romantic relationship deceptor, it's basically the same as the narcissistic cycle, which they will love bomb you. So, oh my gosh, I got the chocolate cake from the special place and I got the Valentine's Day cupcakes. I'm like, I'm trying to go to the gym here, but a lot of food was involved. And so bringing over stuff and complimenting, like, it nauseated me to be, it was over the top compliment. So women have to be on guard we all love to be complimented. Oh, you look lovely in that dress. Oh, we're okay with that. Oh, your hair looks really cute today or whatever. But over the top, when they can't stop talking about it and they interrupt you when you're saying something else to say, oh, I'm sorry. You're just, and it's just over the top. That's a warning flag. That's a warning flag. And so that's how it starts. And it's not always for money. A lot of time, the online predators, it's strictly to extract money. But the gym person was not, there was no money ever exchanged. I'm guessing that his motivation was just emotional manipulation. Can I get a woman to say, I love you? And that's another sign is if they say within a month, if they say, I love you, or they're trying to get you to say, I love you, you don't love me. You don't know me. So there's some things that's another tip for women is like, yeah, be careful. And there was something in my spirit, and that's to your point about the soul too, is that there was something almost from the beginning, and it only had a 2-month shelf life because I was aware of things that were happening. But there was something in my spirit that said something's off here. We would go have a fabulous dinner, and I would come home and think and call one of my inner circle friends. And I said, yeah, we just went to dinner. It was great dinner. The conversation was mediocre at best the whole 2 months, but something didn't feel right. And you have to trust that, what you were saying, that intuition, you have to trust that, because most of the time, and I'm saying most, probably almost 100% of the time, it is right. And it's going to guide you and lead you and protect you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think and it's to think about, how do you help people to get in tune with that intuition? Because some people don't trust their intuition,
Yeah.
But it is the intuition, which is also a quality of the soul that is trying to let you know something's up, something's not right here. And then what happens is the intellect that overrides that and says, no, just needs more time, or it'll work itself out. But we're not realizing that sometimes in the grand scheme of things in the universe, what happens is the soul is trying to still heal from the desire of wanting to be loved. And that other person is trying to be healed for a desire of wanting to be loved. And so the other person may be manipulating you to try to make sure you say, I love you, as you were saying before. And then what happens is if the soul is not having healed all the way, then it gets kind of glommed onto that, because now I have someone giving me attention and seeing I am valued and I am loved. But it's in some ways a false way of going down the path, of your evolution and your growth that you want. And that's when we can make self-corrections. Like you said, you called up your confidant friends and said, something's not right here, and so they were able to say, you may be right. Listen to yourself. So that's a way of thinking about this.
That's so, what you just said, it's so true. And I saw it lived out in real time. And often when somebody's trying to deceive you, and a lot of times this happens mostly online. If you're on online dating sites or something, they will be in a position of authority, because a lot of times women gravitate toward law enforcement, military, high-ranking military. They'll say this is so old now, I don't even know if it works anymore. I think it does, but they're working on an oil rig offshore, things like that. And they're a high-ranking somebody because, it's like, it kind of like tickles our fancy. Mm-hmm. And so that's a thing. But why I'm mentioning that is that the person that I met at the gym said he was a canine officer, maybe retired or former canine officer. So that was exciting to me. I mean, I'm not a dog lover or animal lover, but just that field is fascinating to me. But I had the suspicion, I guess you could say, and I haven't really shared this part publicly at all, but I felt like with that, I don't know if he was or wasn't, but in the things he was saying, I felt like he put some kind of device in my living room, because we would have a conversation and then I would talk to my inner circle about things that I was observing. And then he would direct that conversation. He would mention, and that happened more than once. I would talk to my inner circle friends about my apprehensions, but then he would address that same apprehension with me. And that happened more than once. It would, like, how would you possibly know that? And so I found myself in my upstairs bathroom with a towel rolled and stuffed under the door, talking to my friends. And I remember saying, just the fact that I am talking in my bathroom with a towel rolled up underneath a door says something is really wrong here. I could never prove it. I looked around. I could never, but I don't know. But it was uncanny the way he would address things that I was only sharing on the telephone verbally with people.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because they do have these small mics that they can put on you. I don't know. Also, sometimes the individual, maybe because of their past patterns, they know these things will come up that women will question in them, and so they have answers already, to address those things. I don't know, but that's very fascinating. But what you're also sharing then is the thing about deception. Mm-hmm. My mind goes in two directions. With deception, is sometimes we don't realize as women, we want the deception because we want the icing on the cake. We want the cake and the icing and everything, and it's good and it's great. But our intuition is still telling us something's still off here. And my mind goes in the direction of discernment. And so what we're learning through the situations with deception is how to better discern what is true and what isn't true. True. And we have to be able to ask ourselves that question: is this true? Is this the truth in the matter? Is this person being honest to me? Because you're not just asking it to that person, but you're also asking to your inner self. Because getting back to that intuition and that trusting of the intuition, it allows you to say, something's still not right. It's not right. So I need to be honoring of that and be able to pivot when I need to pivot.
That is so true. And there was that pivot part as I asked myself, something doesn't feel right here. I kept hearing that still small voice that said, protect your heart from the very beginning. And I, ignored that to a certain part because of, to your point of, just wanting somebody to love me for me. And so, we ignore that inner voice because we want it to be true. We just so want it to be true. But that remained constant. But then it tipped into a little less attention. A little, a day would go by without the call. At first it was twice a day. I just wanted to hear your voice and all that. But then it became, when you're in he never did the devaluing part, which is more of a narcissistic cycle. But the discarding was just, hey, we always talk on Friday night, and but no explanation, but turning it back on me, and stuff, almost like gaslighting type of response. Never did answer the question. And then it became less and less communication. And then it was just completely no communication at all. And I'm like, okay, I was right, because it followed a certain cycle. And that's what I really want to communicate to women, is that look for a cycle, look for a pattern, because that's what's going to happen in a deceptive relationship. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hold that thought, because I think you're hitting on something that's really important. Mm-hmm. And that is the way in which this deception evolves or grows itself is that it puts so much attention in the first stages of it, in terms of, you're the center of their life, you're the apple of my eye, and I need to be around you, and so forth and so on. And then there is kind of this intermittent interaction with each other, which also for the woman grows her heart to say, oh, he's going to call me, right? He didn't call me today. What? So it creates this yearning for the person to call you, and they don't. And then all of a sudden they slip off the slip off the cliff, and then they're down in the gutter, and it's like they're not even attending to you or anything. You're on the cliff and saying, what do I do? What do I do here? And if you don't look at those patterns that are going on, you don't want to fall into over into the valley, but instead you want to push yourself back and just say, what just happened here? What just happened here? And why is this person is truly a love of me? This behavior would not occur in this way. He would not then be hot and then go to being really stone cold in the interaction, because that hurts the woman's affections, that hurts the woman's heart. And that's why you were saying earlier, I got to make sure I'm protecting my heart. We need to guard our heart. Yes, certainly, but we don't always know how to do that. Thoughts about that?
Yes, we absolutely need to guard our hearts, but we need to have the flashlight of light so we are not so guarded and so protective that the good ones can't come in. Because often I hear from males that women are so closed off, they don't know when a good man, comes right in front of their face. It's because of these other predators that we have had to self-protect. And often we, instead of guarding our hearts, we put a chain link fence with barbed wire and rabid dogs. We don't let anything come through there because we are not going to let that happen to us again. Self-preservation is one thing, yes, but just guarding our hearts to where, be aware of the pattern, be aware of that cycle of what's happening. Like you said, look down, look in the cliff, and we're like, I know you're down there. What's wrong with me? And we often turn it on ourselves, which is not, it feels natural, but it should never be. But we often do. As women, turn it on ourselves, something we did, something we said, what did I do that was so bad that you went away? All those things come up. If you have unhealed childhood trauma, that's a trigger that will reignite when these things happen.
Yeah, a very good point. And those are the things that where life is trying to teach us how to heal them, whether consciously or unconsciously, that we're trying to be able to find a way in which, going back to what we talked about earlier, how do I love myself, to be an anchor in that, and also anchor in the fact for those who are walking a spiritual path, how do I ask Christ into my heart? How do I ask, Jesus or Buddha or the Krishna or whoever that key saint is for you into my heart and help me to understand what's going on for me? Because as you said earlier, there are patterns that happen. So there are patterns for those who are more deceptive. And if you can understand those patterns and read up about them, which, people can do, or they also look at the patterns of what is a good man. Because there are patterns for a good man as well. And being aware of how attentive they are in the truest sense of the word, because they're nurturing the divine essence of who you are. Because as they nurture the divine essence of who you are through the omega energy, it allows you to actually help them to understand the truth of the alpha energy. So alpha and omega energy within each one of us, but we have predominance in one, the feminine, and in the masculine energy, and the feminine energy and the masculine energy. And so we have to, that's where that quality of discernment becomes so very helpful for us, and ask for it. We can ask the higher self or soul self, help me to have greater discernment, to see the truth and be willing to walk in that truth and not be fearful, I guess is the word I am, because I'm not going to have someone in my life.
Yeah, and that's true. And that I tell people sometimes, and it's a negative declaration, which I am cognizant that I need to correct, but I tell people, hey, my man picker's faulty. My man picker is faulty. So, I've had many through the 23 years of being divorced. I have some doozy stories to say. But when I say that discernment of knowing, I know what a good man looks like. I know that exactly what you said, which was so on point, was there's a pattern there too. It's a good pattern, but often we have not experienced, we don't have any frame of reference for that good pattern. So we don't know how to recognize it, or we push it away when it comes to us, because either we're still working on that self-love part, or we don't think we're deserving of it. And we just like, no, you're just like all the rest. We just group them all together.
We do that. I'm wondering what your thinking is about something you said earlier too, that your father was very successful, and he was very much, into wanting to be a part of the family, but he also drank. And so there were some aspects of him that were off limits to you and his ability to love, at the level that you would want. And sometimes what the healing process is that we recognize it in our father, because sometimes we're attracting some of the same characteristics and qualities into these male relationships that we do have, because they're trying to be healed, but they're trying to be seen. They're trying to be aware for us to be able to say, I can get that in another way. I can get it through the male source, yes, but I also get in my Heavenly Father as well, and ask him to anchor those qualities within me, that I will attract a greater wholeness when it comes to the man. And I'm also having a reframing of that. What did you call it? Man picker?
Yes. Yes, that and that's funny, because I've had some really serious, and I didn't have an adversarial relationship with my father. Well, I did. We butted heads, especially during my teenage years, but he was also a protector, because my mother and my sister were aligned in their, narcissistic ways. And so both very emotionally manipulative and all that. And so they spent a lot of time, they just loved each other. And so my dad was more of a protector for me, but he was also controlling, in his way. And so I find myself gravitating toward controlling men. It's like, that's a comfort zone. I know how to deal. I know how to navigate around that, because I experienced it, not over the top, but enough to where, yeah, I see you're controlling, but you know what? It's a comfort zone, because I'm used to that. And that's where we need continual healing, is because to be self-aware, that's excellent. We need to do that. But we also need to set such personal value-based boundaries in our life that if that's a deal breaker, that might be a complete deal breaker for somebody else. I'm never going to be with a controlling man ever again. For me, it's like, I can deal with it. It's not a deal breaker. Lying, cheating, that kind of stuff. Absolute deal breakers. Swearing, disrespecting, that should be deal breakers for everybody. But we tend to fall in our comfort zone of that. Growing up, even though my father did drink, he was drinking, he would mow the lawn and take care of the yard, took impeccable care of our yard, and was very family oriented. But he would start drinking beer at, I don't know, 10, 11 in the morning on Saturdays. We capped our own beer in the garage, as we had a family assembly line where he made his own and stuff. He had cases of it. I never acquired a taste for it, but he always maintained his dignity, and he maintained his success at work and stuff. So I never equated either of those as being negative. It was just there.
Yeah, exactly. It's just food for thought, because I think we're complex beings. And I think we're in the complexity of who we are, the good and the not so great, and purifying those aspects. And sometimes when we're coming from families that have their good, the bad, and their indifferent that's taken place. We absorb that, and we don't realize we're absorbing certain things,
Yes.
as a child, as Montessori, Marie Montessori said, the absorbent mind, And then the mind is, the body and the senses. It's like when you're in the ocean, you're gonna, get wet.
Yeah.
And so we don't realize that. And so, but when we come that, as you were saying earlier, that attunement to saying, okay, my father was a protector of me, which I like, and my father had some other qualities maybe I didn't like as much, but that's the complexity of all of us. We have qualities we like and qualities we don't like about ourselves.
Yes.
But in terms of the men that are attracted to us, there may be men who tend to be more controlling, but it's on a continuum, because you can be controlling, and then you can also go to the, arrogance of an egomaniac. Maniac that could take place. And so it's like you got to figure out where your balance, I think, is what you're saying. And I think you said a superb thing. And that is understand your values and live your life based upon those key values. And when those values are being disrupted in some ways, then you realize that's a warning sign. And in that warning sign, it allows you to say you have choice. And then try to think about which choice. Do I want to go to the right? Do I want to go to the left? I go straight up the middle. What do I want to do here? And not think you're unconscious to those choices to be made.
Oh, that's so true. And knowing your values, having them taped to your bathroom mirror, having them taped to your car dash, having them on your computer. I have, a couple little things, not my values, but a couple little sayings taped to the bottom of my monitor. You have to constantly strengthen and undergird those values, because I was like, okay, my values are A, B, C, D, and E, giving and nurturing and being thoughtful and all that. But you have to remember that, because like you said, life happens. And sometimes things get muddled in the middle of that. And sometimes when the predators come in, their whole goal is to make you question everything. And so you have to have those values so strong in you that you can, like, nope, and that's not arrogance, and that's not conceitedness. That's just an inner self-confidence and self-love that, like, you're not going to penetrate this value, no matter what you try to do or say. And we have to be so strong in that.
I agree so much. And I think I want to do a part 2 with talking about this. And the part 2 is around, cultivating that inner strength, that self-love, because you had that inner strength in the beginning of your life, regardless of what's going on in your family dynamics, by knowing that you wanted to go and be secluded, go in your room and focus on some things that allow you to grow internally and to see a different world through reading. And so those are all the wonderful things. But for this segment, as we're talking about emotional traits that can fuel relationship deception, what would you want to leave the seeker with? What is pearl of wisdom that you would like to leave them with?
Oh, I think I would like to, the main thing is that I think I would like to just make sure that you are so, just so we just talked about, be full of your values, but just, I know I said this in our questionnaire, and I can't recall what I said, in that.
That's okay. You can go with what needs to be said right now, what's coming up for you.
Yeah. I think just be self-confident, and I've struggled because of my background. I think everybody in the room is smarter, better, more worthy than I am. And so I would say what I tell women is the main point I want to stress is walk in your worth. Know the value of your worth. Know what you bring to the table, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yes, we're all compiled of these great traits and maybe some not so great traits, and none of us are perfect, but walk in your worth, because you're here for a reason. And I tell people, you're the sperm cell that made it. out of all the billions. So, you're the one who fought and made it. You are here for a reason, to fulfill a role, to fulfill a mission. So walk in your worth.
Wow, that's very powerful. And we're going to be coming back to talk about that worth and that confidence and everything in part 2. So seekers, stay tuned for part 2. But also, I would like Michelle to talk about how they may reach out to you if they want to reach out to you.
Absolutely. They can email me at Michelle, Michelle, at heartswindler.com. That's the name of my book. I'm sure maybe we'll talk about that later, but it's Michelle at heartswindler.com. And you can visit the same website. My book and publishing website is winningproof.com, like winningproof.com. So you can check those out. And I'm sure Dr. Holder will put my social media links. So feel free to connect with me. I am a connector. So I love to connect with people, hear your stories, make new friends. So come on.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for this delightful conversation, Michelle. And for seekers, stay tuned for part 2. Take care. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me for this episode on Mastering Life's Adventures, being your best self through soul evolution. If you have enjoyed what you've heard today, I would be delighted if you would share this episode with others, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe to my Mastering Life's Adventures podcast. Look forward to your joining the next episode. Please leave any comments or suggestions you might have below. Bye for now.